I guess I'll take the preceding 5, 8, whatever minutes it is, put it in the B-roll.
Sure, just in case you need a little banter.
Yeah.
You need to pad it out with some banter.
Yeah. Yeah. People will be like, what the hell is this?
Yep.
So we're gonna start here in a second. Scene. All right. I'm a person who has serious questions. And go. So here we are, another episode of Perimeter Fires with I've been looking forward to this for a long time, with Scott Eden from at the time 2014 ESPN wrote a game-changing article in ESPN. And before we get started, just a sort of context to Scott. Scott came in, and we'll get into it, I think, but Bonfire is an insular culture. It has always been that way, and especially after '99. And when Scott reached out to talk about Bonfire and write his story, I think we kind of put you through the gauntlet a little bit. Tested you out to see where your heart and motivation was. And you were motivated, and you came out and you got into it, and wrote what I have heard described from many people as one of, if not the best thing of its kind ever written about Texas A&M.
Oh, come on.
Not even just Bonfire, Texas A&M.
That is high praise.
I have had
Flattered.
I've had people cry when they start talking about that piece. Somebody introduced me one time to somebody, and they're like, "This is Dion," and they're like, "Who?" And then they said, he was sort of in that article about Bonfire, and this person started weeping and like gave me a big hug. Not like, "Oh, you're from the article," but like, "Oh my gosh," they were hugging the article.
But yes, personification of the article in some ways you are, since you were my guide into the world of Bonfire.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I told you at the time, but when they called, one of the nice editor ladies called. And
fact-checking process? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She called me at the office back when I was where I was then. And she's like, just calling to check some facts. And she was fact-checking. And then she said, did you say this? And like a quote check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that sounds right, but I was confused. So I called you afterwards. I was like, why was this lady asking me what I said? Like a quote check.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, you're quoted. I was like, what? Why am I quoted? I was legitimately surprised.
You were under the impression that you would not appear in the article?
Yeah, up until the quote check.
Wow. And actually, the fact checker should not read verbatim the quote back to you. The way to do it is to kind of paraphrase it to make sure that it's factually accurate. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
That's probably what she did.
Okay.
She confirmed some quotes, or not some quotes. She confirmed some facts, that this, that, the other. And then there was like this, did you say something like this?
Yeah.
And that was just my first, like, wait, what? And
it's hilarious that you became like one of the central figures. In fact, you have the last quote in the article, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you did call. You did call to tell me that. You're like, hey, I can't tell you what it's going to be like, but you get the last word. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, you'd actually
better be good.
You didn't. You were a little uncomfortable with that too, I think. Now that I'm following the process.
Because I felt like what I was doing there was just connecting you with very interesting people with perspectives.
And you did do.
Uh, yeah, I felt like they were, you know, uh, I felt like they told a story that was, you know, didn't require me. But I even introduced you to some people that disagreed with me emphatically.
Sure. Which I would have found anyway, but yeah.
Yeah,
Part of the point of the piece is about the controversy of restarting Bonfire,
yeah.
obviously.
I remember you asking me. You're like, why are you introducing me to this person?
You mean because they would be on the other side, like someone who is critical? Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, that's the Bonfire story. It's personal and it's important. And if
mm,
it matters enough to you to disagree about, well, then your opinion matters.
yes.
So, what what was the genesis of this story? Did you find it? Did ESPN find it and then find you? What happened?
Let me think about that. I got to try to remember. Sometimes after a story, you get done researching it, spend all these weeks, sometimes months, sometimes more than a year or more working on something. Then it gets published, and you forget like the origin story. But I think it is that my one of my closest editors at ESPN at the time, his
Mm,
father was a professor at A&M, for many years, including in 1999. And so my editor had a connection to A&M, and then had somehow learned that Bonfire had been restarted off campus, in this sort of unaffiliated with the university way.
mm,
And my editor knew a lot about Bonfire and the controversies that came out of it. And I think even his father was like an engineering professor, so helped in the investigations afterward to see what went wrong, and design wise with the old stack. And
mm.
so I believe my editor was the way in. Yeah, so he kind of said, "Hey, do you want to look into this?" And then I somehow I found you after that.
Yeah, you uh if I remember correctly, I got a call from, it would have been Patrick Bailey.
Okay.
And he said, "Hey, I just got off the phone with this guy named Scott from ESPN, and he wants to write an article." And Pat was on the website still as a former Red Pot. I think
Okay.
contact information and stuff.
Oh
And
yes,
you,
that's right.
yeah, and you called him, and he passed you on to me.
That's it. I remember that. Sure. Yeah, I just found the organization on the web and just called up the number that was on there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know if you noticed this. I don't know if I ever disclosed this to you.
Mm.
Uh, First of all, I'll edit this piece out. My audio's okay? I forgot to ask earlier.
Yeah, perfectly
Is it
clear. I'm good.
okay? Good.
Also.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. What face was I making? Like this. There you go.
good.
That way I can seam it together just right in editing.
Okay.
Something. I don't know. So
You tell me.
yeah. Um, I'm gonna confess this.
Uh-oh.
When Patrick called to tell me this, um, the Reds are very busy. Part of their role is representing Bonfire.
Mhm.
But a story of the magnitude that you were describing already, there was this question of, are they going to be able to have the time to give the attention that the story needs? And this being the biggest platform that it had ever been spoken of. And before talking to you, I did my research and I looked you up and looked at what you wrote. And I was like, holy moly, this guy gets into it. So I kind of used the strategy that, oh man, I'm gonna put my business on the street and everybody in the media is gonna know what I'm doing next time this happens. But when I called you, I was like, listen, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have to engage with the students from the red pots to the junior red pots, brown pots,
Hmm.
all of them, all the way down crew chief level. You're gonna get in there. You're gonna have to F the logs. You're gonna have to, and I'm just throwing it at you like every word I'm saying.
Yeah, it was like you were speaking some other language. I was confused from the get go there. From the get go there, but that was part of the
Yeah, that was intentional.
story, though. You know?
It did become part of the story, but it's sort of like a test.
Oh, I see.
Like like if I just throw all this stuff at him, is he gonna go, oh man, no, they just wanted me to write another thing. Never mind. This is no, I'm not interested. And you were just more intrigued,
No, that had the opposite effect. Yes.
which is that's sort of it passes the test.
Hmm.
You instead of going, that's a lot. This is technical. You went, oh, this sounds fascinating. There's a culture at work here. I guess is that the thought process?
Yeah, and I didn't realize that was you were testing me there. Wow.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was just it was a filter.
it was the exam. I'm normally the person who does the examining. But the examiner was being examined by, you know, the person, the examined. You became the examined. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
I pretty immediately kind of felt almost like, like an anthropologist sort of, meeting this this community or tribe or subculture, and I always am drawn to stories about subcultures that are really structured, and have their own miniature like worlds that you can kind of dive into, and this for sure had all of that, from right down to the a different language
Yeah.
and stories behind each of the, there's a story behind every little nuance in this subculture, in this world, right?
Right.
And you can
Yes.
traceable, like these stories are kind of handed down. This whole idea of it being handed down from generation to generation with a tragedy that interrupted it became like the kind of focus of the reporting, and then the written piece itself.
Yeah, and to that, with one quick contextual digression, after you engaged with the language and so indicated that I want to get into this. I'm not here to write some surface piece. To the experience of Bonfire, part of its insularity is so many people just want to show up at Burn and go, there it is. And especially when it comes to telling the story, and you engaged with everything behind it. So I talked to the boys. I said, this is going to require your attention, and this is going to be big, and so a big commitment, and if y'all are up for it, then we'll go forward. And they said, absolutely, we can do it. Of course, they were saying this in the summer, right? It was like May or June when you first called.
Was it? I thought it was later in the year.
It,
I,
it might have been.
I think my first trip there was in early football, early in the semester, fall semester.
Yeah, and that was
I ended up taking like 2 or 3 trips. Yeah.
yeah. I think it was at least three.
Yeah.
But in either event, they hadn't started work yet. And the thing about
That's right. I think.
when you're a fish, you think you know what Bonfire is, then you start building it, and you go, oh my gosh, there's so much more. And then if you climb leadership and you get to be a crew chief or something, you think, oh, okay, I know how this works. I saw how my crew chiefs did it. I got it. And then it starts, and you go, oh my gosh, there's so much more. All the way up to senior red pot. You think, yeah, I could do this. We got the time. We can handle it. And then the season starts, and it's, oh my, I didn't know. And so it was just sort of those, are you sure? Are you sure, you guys? Yep, they're going to do it. And so I told you that they were, down to participate.
Yeah.
And then I warned you I said, to your point about stories, we tell a lot of stories.
It is true, especially a certain someone on the other end of this connection right here likes to spin some tales.
I get it honest. It's the culture. And I already had in mind some of the people that I knew would provide some good context and information,
Mm.
and all of them had in common that they tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of our identity, I think. One of the great unspoken Aggie traditions.
But that's important. No matter the story I'm reporting on, I will always gravitate toward the people, and they will become like the main characters. There are the people who are good at storytelling. It's sort of just a natural thing. So that's part of what I'm sure made this story good. It's not necessarily me. It's finding the people who are good storytellers and then just kind of gathering the material.
Well, and I did warn you. Do you remember me warning you that? And I learned so much from you. I got, I guess, confidence from you. And I'm fascinated not just by telling stories, but everything that entails. Memory, how memory works, the life of a story. Not just the snapshot of what happened at one point in time, but the story itself and how it goes through, and what happens and does it change and how does it change and everything. And so I think very self-consciously I told you there's some people, myself included, I think it was confessional, that we tell stories, and we, as Aggies, we try to tell the truth. But at some point we discover that the truth no longer entails all of the facts. Like I was very worried that, there's stories that paint a picture of what really happened in the feelings or whatever, but I'm not sure after so many years if they are factually accurate, but they are true. And you said something at the time I was just, okay, I feel comfortable. You said something to the effect of, I don't know if you remember, but it was something like, you can't tell the truth with just the facts because there's no such thing as a perfect fact. There's perspective and angles and nuance involved, that your fact, it's factual, but from another angle, it's not a fact.
Yeah, I guess I would say though, there are facts, there are things there are events that did happen, and there is a root truth. But then when you're a writer or a journalist, you're gathering those facts, but then you're putting them together and interpreting them, and that's where it's something other than just factual, right? There's a different truth there, and
Yeah.
that's just normal storytelling, like that's a normal human way to kind of make order out of chaos of being alive, is to that happens. Our own lives become narrated in story fashion, and they lose certain facts and gain embellishments over the course, and it happens just in normal human interaction, let alone in a journalist going in and trying to learn the truth and then putting it down on the page, another act of interpretation. So yeah, it gets swept up in these different levels of meaning.
Sort of allegory of the cave sort of thing. Plato, is that right?
Hey, right back to that. Yeah, sure. Let's, maybe why Socrates was against the written language. He was a proponent of illiteracy. Maybe for this reason, to keep stories kind of contained in our minds, and once you put it on the page, it sort of goes somewhere else. I don't know. We're going off.
That's almost a whole other. All right, I'm going to write that down as a next conversation with Scott thing.
Yes, we will talk about ancient thinkers.
I'm totally with that. The story having to be like a real living thing. Like people have said, hey Dion, you should put all these stories together in like a book. I'm like, no, that's the worst.
Right? Yeah.
You should just keep telling them, pass them down.
There's something about they lose their power, when they get set down in print.
Yeah. Now, so all that to paint the picture that you were approaching this from clearly intrigued by the stories, but also this understanding that like I felt better knowing that I can tell you the story that I know, and then you can meet other people, and I know that you're not going to go with whatever story sounds the best. You're going to make that order out of the chaos because you understand it's not to somebody's fault that they forget a detail. It's humanity. And so taking all these disparate wild stories out there and finding that thread, that was crystal clear from the very beginning that that was going to be your approach.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah. I like to be clear with everybody. I mean, you knew from the beginning too that the only other reason I was interested, it was there was the anthropological, that's kind of exploring an unknown subculture that intrigued me. But of course, also the tragedy and the controversy of restarting it. I mean, there would be no story if it weren't also for that. Or
Right.
that drew me to the story too. This kind of central controversy, and that came from tragedy. You know,
Well, and when I don't know if you remember this sort of phase of the thing, but it's to me it was the most illustrative of your approach. And when I tell people and try to give them some backstory about the article and how it came together, you were committed. You were going to do it. You were going to come down here, and you had said absolutely. I want to go into the woods. I want to do all the things. And then it came down to where you were going to stay, and
right?
and I'm sure the motherships got all their things that they can do, but I happen to know the general manager at the La Quinta, which is the closest hotel to the memorial, and you could actually get a room that could see the Bonfire Memorial.
Mm.
And I was able to pretend hard enough with the Traditions dormitory
Yeah,
on Northgate.
that's right.
Yeah. And so before I gave you your two choices, I called Traditions and I'm like, hey, this is Dion with Bonfire. That meant nothing. That meant nothing to her. But I just said it with authority. And I was like, there's a writer from ESPN coming down and they're looking, trying to get a place to stay. And I'm thinking it'd be great if they stayed on Northgate close to the Chicken. What do you got? And she's like, oh, it's a dorm. But she's like, oh, we can make a room available.
Yeah,
So I gave you those two choices. And she probably got off the phone and was like, who is that? But so I gave you two choices, and of course you can pick whatever you wanted. But I was like, if it makes it easier, you can stay at the La Quinta close to the memorial, or you can stay at the Traditions near the Dixie Chicken. And you said, what's the Chicken? And I said, that's the place, that's the bar, and that's where people who build Bonfire go now. And you said, I want to go where they are now.
definitely. Yes, I'm glad I made that choice. I mean, really, there was no choice. That was the place to be. Whenever you can just surround yourself by the thing you're writing about, that's the way to go. Not separate yourself off in some bland hotel. If there's an opportunity to be in the student body, that's what I wanted. That was the choice to make. I want to be surrounded by the thing that I'm going to be writing about.
Well, and
Really.
and I think maybe I don't know. Maybe I was smart enough that this was another test. Maybe I don't think it was. I think I was just offering you two choices, but it did teach me what you were writing about. Were you wanting to write about then, or were you wanting to write about now? And when you picked Across from the Dixie Chicken, it was clear you were writing about now.
For sure. I mean, the new Bonfire. Yeah, that was the. I mean, again, that's what drew me to it. The controversy, the now, and also, I just reread the story for the first time in a long time, and I was struck by. It's going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but how funny it was and how sad the story was.
Yeah,
And there is the Bonfire of now is joyous, even though there is this tragedy that haunts everything. Um, there is a joyousness to being young, to being in college, and to be building Bonfire. There's a humor. behind Bonfire and all of the language of the subculture that needed to be captured in the story, along with the absolute, just sadness. And I'm glad that I'm not sure that the article did it perfectly, but I'm glad that those two elements are sort of at least there, present in the article itself. Upon rereading some years later.
Yeah, and you were very good, frustratingly good, about keeping all that close to the vest. That I knew that there were people who didn't like having these conversations because they'd had them before and watched them turn into something else,
Mm.
because that's what somebody decided they wanted.
Mm.
Same words, and it became a painful process. And I knew that there were people that were. I was telling them I got a feeling he's going to approach this from a perspective of fairness and not with an end goal in mind. And so but I wanted to know, like, am I going to make some people furious? And you were so good at like, nah, I'm not telling you nothing.
Well, because how could I know? I mean, all I wanted to do was get as many perspectives as possible, and that meant going down into very uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
The the parents, the family of the victims. It meant trying to get in touch with the Red Pots of 1999. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's just what they feel is, I mean, but that was something I had to do, and I didn't know how any of that would turn out. That was just, but those were reporting paths that I kind of had to go down, so I couldn't tell you how. I didn't know what story I had, so there was nothing to tell you. Playing
Yeah.
the best is, I guess that's one way to put it, but there was also like, it's not something when you're in the reporting, it's not something I don't know how it's going to turn out once I'm done, put the last period on, of writing.
Which is something I definitely learned when it was over. That your approach was, I'm just taking it in. I don't have an opinion yet because I'm taking it in. And
Yeah.
at the time, I was thinking, how could he not have an opinion? Because I knew who you were talking to.
Mm.
I knew who you had to talk to do this. The people that I happened to be able to connect you with, and then other people. I knew you had to talk to the families. There was no way you were going to do it without doing that. I knew you had to talk to administrators. Were there any current administrators you talked to? I know you talked to one former administrator.
Right. And I'm blanking on his. I apologize. His name Bowen. Is that right?
The former president, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Talk
Bowen.
Bowen. I did talk to other, and like all stories that I do, like not a fraction of the people I talk to will actually wind up quoted in the story or even referenced. But I'm sure I talked
Mm,
current administrators.
yeah,
I think there was a fair amount of like, no, I don't want, we're not gonna comment. I think officially from the university, right?
right. Understandable.
And then
Uh,
there were a lot
it
of.
is.
I think I didn't certainly did not talk to all of the family members of the victims. Only most said politely declined. I mean,
Mm,
obvious. It's completely understandable, and anyone's free to or talk to me or not talk to me, of course. Um, and then not many of the red. Thankfully, I got a couple of red pots on the phone from '99, but the majority, no, totally understandable though.
yeah, yeah. There was the Curley family uh, featured prominently in the
Yes,
piece.
yes,
Um,
they were open.
that Yeah, and they've always been
Mm,
so open. I don't understand. I admire it.
mm,
Um, there's strength to this day.
mm-hmm.
I find in their willingness to continue to talk about it.
And there must be a connection with the strength of their son, who, of course, famously, was caught in the wreckage, but was directing emergency responders to others caught in the wreckage, and may have saved lives, himself while he was dying.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
connection between, his strength, their son's strength, and what, how they've been able to handle life since.
Yeah. I saw Mr. Curley. I saw Mr. Curley a few months ago. One of the Tim's old core outfit has a traditions night where they introduce the fish to traditions, and they have a guest or two every year. And this year it was they asked me to come, and Mr. Curley was there, and I hadn't seen him in person in a while, but just such a great, just a great guy. And I'm happy, not surprised at all, but happy that they, availed themselves of the story and providing some, I think, some needed context, sort of at a transitionary point in this story. There was sort of this setup and this transition to let's talk about a little bit about this, and then let's move.
The whole setup was that the reader will automatically expect that eventually you're going to get to the story will unspool, and then you'll eventually get to the tragedy. And so, I mean, and I also thought about, but then discarded the idea of like reconstructing the events of the 99 collapse, but eventually did not do that. Where, there's a way to do stories where it's like that will include a meticulous description of the main event that happened in the past, but I can't remember exactly why I did not do that, but mainly because I guess in the end I wanted to focus on the now, right? To a degree.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you were very excited about. It was after you weren't coming back again. You were hard at work on it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you told me you were writing to Robert Earl Keen.
Okay. Remind me who he was. He is
that quintessentially Aggie singer, songwriter.
Oh,
Robert Earl Keen, Lyle Lovett, the Front Porch Song.
Yes.
Yeah. Some mood music.
Yes.
I remember you being very excited about the setup. You're like, I can't tell you anything about it, but you're gonna love this setup.
I mean,
and I did.
The story.
I love the setup. Yeah.
Do you mean the lead, or the kind of intro?
Yeah.
I remember the reason I told you I before publication I almost never do this. I don't think I've ever done it actually. Described to a source or someone who's in the story what the beginning will be. But I did it to you. I described it to you because I do kind of operate under a no surprises kind of policy. Like I don't want anyone who's in the story to be surprised what's in the story.
Yeah.
But the setup of the story is like these people are insane. Like what is going on down there? This horrible thing happened, and now you're doing it again. You nutbags. I mean, so I wanted to let you know that was the set, but just stay with the story. Don't get so pissed. Don't throw the magazine or shut the screen. Shut it down. And what is that, mother? Yeah. I wanted to.
That's exactly what you said. You didn't tell me exactly what the setup was going to be.
Right.
You didn't
described it.
Tell me.
Read it to you.
Yeah, you were.
Right.
Yeah, you're just like you're going to. It's possible that you are going to want to throw this thing away.
Yeah.
Before the first paragraph is over.
Right.
But just stick with it.
Yeah.
It was well done. It's like it's kind of I like the way to tell stories where people go, I think I understand where this is going. Wait a minute, this went completely in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. I like it when stories.
But it's like a Tarantino thing.
Well, many master storytellers use that.
I'm sure. I'm probably cheapening it with Tarantino. I'll edit later. You just send me the name of somebody. I'll edit. I'll sync it in. So, another confession. Yeah. So you choose Northgate. You choose to live across from the Dixie Chicken. And I'm not sure if it was your first morning.
What better place to be? Anyway,
Of course. Of course. I like the way you described it too. I'm not going to spoiler alert anybody, but I like the way you described it. It was very accurate.
you mean
Um,
the actual physical description of the chicken?
yeah. Yeah.
One of my
It
favorite
was accurate.
descriptions of a place that I've ever done. Yeah.
Yeah. It was on point.
Mhm.
But it might not have been your first morning in town. Maybe it was. But I went out to have my coffee in my front yard. And then there you go,
Hmm.
walking to campus.
Uh
And I said, "Howdy, Scott." And you went,
huh.
and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you, I live here."
I remember this. Yes, you like. I was like, I think I even jumped into the
Yeah,
air. Yeah,
you did. I happen to be right here. But it was great because,
that was an amazing spot you had. Like it's.
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You know, we're up to 4 offspring now. Uh, I think we were working on the third when,
There was
yeah,
already
2014.
there was already a rabble, in your
Yeah,
at that.
yeah. Such a great spot, but kind of small for
Yeah,
at the time 4 coming up on 5.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was awesome because you get to see all these people that migrate to this mecca, Northgate and Dixie Chicken at the center. But it was nice to. I kind of just liked observing you at the end of the day. If we'd meet up at the chicken or something, to just watch kind of all this unspool in your mind. Just like, I saw this today and this and this and this. It was clearly affecting, or maybe surprising. Is that the word? Was it surprising you what you were learning?
I think so. I mean, I was initially intrigued, anthropologically, but then I became, I guess I became enchanted in a way with the joyousness of the bonfire kind of process from cutting, that those first experiences, in the dawn hours, shivering, and then seeing people sleeping in their beds of their pickups, kind of waking up, and that's how the story starts actually. But just the enthusiasm, and then I came to learn all that stuff about the kind of Aggie tradition of learning by doing, and
Mm-hmm.
Bonfire kind of being a part of that educational, that kind of approach to being, to learning. And I became enchanted, by all of that. And yes, so those were the kind of some of the surprising things that I began to learn. And then I
It
tell you,
it was
in our interview sessions, which all of them took place, I believe, at the Dixie Chicken, um, during the reporting. Yeah.
yeah, every last one of them.
Hmm.
And oh, Candace, God bless Candace, because it's already a thing, right? Just you're going out again, and every year it's like, I think this year I'll be able to. Won't be much going on,
Hmm.
and 14 was sort of the same thing. Like, I think, yeah, this will be fine.
Hmm.
It'll be an easy year. Then we had our conversation, and then pretty much every night, well, almost every night you were in town, these decompression sessions or whatever, it'd be bedtime for the kids, and I'm like, honey, Scott,
Got to go meet Eve
chicken.
over there. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's, oh my,
It's walking distance.
uh,
That was a blessing.
walking, stumbling, whatever distance.
I don't think we ever got quite that level.
No, you didn't while you were here. No, but I did.
Oh, okay.
I did. I mean, I remember there's a thing called carpool at A&M where you, I don't know, maybe A&M started its version of it, whatever. But it was this idea before Uber: you call if you're intoxicated,
Oh yeah, sure.
and then these students pick you up,
Yeah.
right, and they take you home. And when I was in college, living on Northgate, I called Uber, or not Uber, carpool, and they came and picked me up, and I gave them my address, and they're like, "We're not taking you to the bars." I was like, "That's my house."
Right. Now I've been there. Come on.
I had to give them. I was like, "All right, fine, you got me," and I gave them my old dorm address, and then they dropped me off at the dorm, and I walked back to the house.
Defeating the purpose slightly. Yeah.
Completely. So, but we digress again. So,
What else you got?
oh, so much, Scott. This is gonna be like 4 or 5 episodes because there's so many things, right? You talked to Dr. Bowen. Well, I know you talked to Dr. Sutherland too.
Mhm.
If I'm remembering correctly, is that right, Doctor, the vice president of student affairs at the time?
Yes. Did he? I don't know. I don't know if he made it into the actual article.
He did not.
Yeah.
He did not. Um, I talked to Griff Lasley
Mm.
yesterday in preparation for this. Different people who were in the article over time have told me their opinions, but I wanted to make sure I had it. Okay, let me make sure I have this right. And so I called Griff and I was like, "What did you think of your experience talking to Scott?" He said, that he was nervous, as anybody who represents Bonfire is. Griff is an absolute sage on Bonfire. I talk to him all the time because every word out of his mouth is enlightening. And he's probably going to laugh. I can hear him laughing right now listening to this. But he said that you approached it with like an honesty and an integrity that he felt like you were getting it, which is a big deal. When Griff Lasley, a seminal figure in Bonfire's history, says he's getting it, then I mean that's a big deal. Do you remember your conversation with Griff?
I think it was maybe even several conversations, but yeah, he was just another, like you said, someone who could help me understand, and could explain and give good quote. I think he's in the article in multiple spots because he could sort of, efficiently get to the heart of certain things, and I could, I could just use those words that he just said, drop it right into the story.
Yep. That's what he's got that I don't got. Efficiency. So he was in the sidebar. I remember he was in the sidebar with a particular quote, and this is what he was laughing about yesterday. He said, "Yeah, they used a lot of my words. I did not expect that they would use some of the words that I used." His boys were like, "I can't believe that Dad said the thing that they printed." But it was good. It was honest. It was the elephant in the room. He dealt with it. So, as this is unfolding, we talk about this going, and then you getting into everything. I don't know. Can you hear that in the background? Do you hear that?
I heard some jingling.
Yeah.
Can't tell if it's my house or yours.
Come here. See if you remember this guy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He's still alive.
What's his name again? Forget.
Ace.
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 Of course. He's still with us.
He's still breathing.
Great.
You can't hear. So as this is unfolding and you're talking to these personalities or what have you, was there a conversation back to ESPN? Because it feels like it grew beyond what was expected.
They usually give me a lot of leeway. So I often in these stories, I'll just go. They'll give me the assignment. I go out and then they'll hear nothing. No editor will anything until there's a draft, like a draft submitted. And I believe that was the same way here. I don't think I spoke much to to my editors about the how things were developing. I think maybe I had to, like, the third trip down there, like, justify another trip. Like, why are you going to A&M again, man?
Yeah.
Get a fun another trip here, like. But I think maybe I had to like sort of say, no, and then sort of describe this kind of oh, this is this subculture that that I'm kind of deeply into now, and let me go down one more time so I can see the final when they're raising the center pole. It's like kind of a ceremonial thing, and I want to be able to capture. Just let me get down there to do that. And so maybe then I kind of divulged to the editors like this kind of other. It's not just about the tragedy and these crazy people rebuilding Bonfire. It's also about exploring this world and from this anthropological kind of angle, which kind of also gave it some of its humor, right?
Right. Well, and I wonder. I've always tried to piece together the evolution, because originally the way it was explained, or the way I understood it, was that it would be in the magazine, and then at a certain point it was like, it's not going to be in the magazine anymore. It's going to have to be on the web.
Well, I
And
totally
then
follow that, yeah. But I mean, even then, even in 2014, like most people were reading the stories online, even then, even
yeah.
8 years ago. So,
Well, I got the impression that they were like, this is not going to fit in the magazine. We thought it was going to fit in the magazine. It's not going to fit in the magazine.
and that often, unfortunately, like you, I'm also long-winded, so I tend to turn in things that are far longer than they bargained for. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe that was part of the calculus of doing online only. And then I think the photographer was
Frederick.
Frederick is awesome. I mean,
Oh,
he's super good. So like I think they also, it's not just me. They saw these great images that would live better, like in this beautifully designed online thing.
yeah.
And there was just
Well, and from that,
room in the pages for all of his great pictures.
oh yeah, there was just the few that were in the magazine. I've still got a copy. They were great. And then the slideshow on the web, but a video sprung out of it.
Mm.
Two videos, in fact. One that deconstructed the night as a single thread of narrative, but from like three different people. So as people spoke, they just
Oh yeah,
used these narratives and spun this incredible. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Just this incredible video production that wasn't even, nobody even said anything about it. I think the introduction to the video thing was, hey, so somebody's doing an article. Can we come down and do a video? It's not related, but it's related. So it was like things were popping out of it that weren't
yeah.
planned at the beginning.
You're refreshing my memory. I think it at some point, yeah, it became like it was pretty late though, the video stuff, and then Frederick was there just for that one or a couple days at the end, or when center pole went up, right? And then maybe he went back.
He was there for cut two.
He was okay.
Yeah. And at the beginning, the editor of the magazine, he was like, hey, I hear you take photos. Do you think we could use yours for the article? And I was like, you could, but I'm pretty sure I'm not good enough. and he's like, oh no, I'll look at him in closer detail. I think it could work.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like a little while later, he's like, yeah, so Frederick Broden's going to come down.
Yes. What happened is he looked at your photos and was like, nah, we need a Frederick got the call. Yeah.
He was right. The kid was right. But Frederick did great, and he had he had a Max, his assistant, running around with.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Flash. Yeah. And the whole time, Max over here, Max there, Max go, and he was just all these, it's clearly like this internship, apprenticeship kind of relationship.
Yeah. It's definitely.
It was fascinating, and I loved watching him work, and so efficient. And
German.
Towards the very end, what's that?
Frederick is German, isn't he?
Or Swiss or something? But yeah.
Germanic. Can we say?
Yeah.
That's possible. Germanic. Okay.
Yeah. And just very, it was just so efficient and brilliant. And then I was just kind of like, hey, how did it go? And he pulls stuff onto his camera, and they're just instantly, I got to take like 100 shots to get the one that he just went, got it. And I finally asked him, I'm like, so what's Mac's story? Is he like an intern or whatever? He goes, no, it's my son. I was like,
It's
oh, oh, dang.
well,
So
kind of the ultimate apprentice, one's son.
yeah, yeah.
Let's
And so a couple years ago, I finally got like a flash, like detachable wireless, whatever flash with some power that I could, bring some light into some things. And I needed some help making that flash mobile. And so we established that anybody who helps me carry around my flash is Max. So, like when they're carrying my flash, I yell at him, Max, Max over here, Max over there. Yeah. So
Oh, that's
what's that?
that was me using German words. Mach schnell, Max.
There it is. Scott nailed it.
Multilingual.
But let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can. Which the whole Max thing, right, brings up, I think, an important thing. I've never done this before. Do you see it?
Oh dear God.
Yeah.
My Lord.
Yeah.
That's not good form.
It improved, actually. It improved very quickly.
God. Look at that beer gut.
I was impressed.
I guess the facial expression is, it's a little try hard, a little on the try hard side of things.
Yeah, but you got there, Scott. I appreciate the reference. Again, no spoiler alert. Try hard.
Looms large in the piece.
So, this is you investing, right? Actually getting into it the way that you said you would.
Uh-huh.
And cutting with this is you with Lechner, with the nerds.
Okay, right, yeah. Like nerds.
Again, fitting prominently in the story.
That was an amazing detail, actually. The Lech nerds, I saw that, you have a shirt that has like the kind of engineering design plan for the stack. And then learning that pre-1999, the Lech nerds also had a shirt showing the design. And then in the aftermath, when the investigations were ongoing, like the only plan that the investigators could find of Bonfire was like the old Lechner T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So like that, these little amazing details that came out of the reporting.
And I never knew that. That's where I learned that. That was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
That little tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
But more than just participating, it was like there were all these bars that were, everybody's just kind of measuring, how is this story going to be approached? You get through the thesaurus or whatever of our language, and you recognize that there's a culture behind it, right?
Glossary is the probably appropriate.
There it is, glossary. You get through. You choose to stay where it is. You come out. You actually do what you said, which was you swung an axe and you did the work. But what I was struck by is, this is you in Walton, talking with one of the Walton chiefs. You engaged in this very intentional, just a sponge kind of way to watch the way that you looked the students in the eyes and respected them and took their input. And there was they never felt afterwards. I tried to not just, I wanted to get this young man, but I wasn't there for all of your conversations. But afterwards I would say, hey, how do you feel? And they're just like, he treated me with respect. And that's why I enjoyed and was glad I got this photo. This was a respectful conversation. That I don't know if you remember how this one ended. He was in the middle of a sentence, and then a truck showed up.
Hmm.
And Walton loads. He had to go load the truck. So he's just like, sorry, I have to leave.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I do remember this. That was at the burn site, though, right? Yeah. Or was that?
This was at the cut site.
Huh. Okay.
So this was Club Walton, their little
Oh, right.
tree house that they somehow come up with every year.
Right.
But I remember he said, sorry, I got to leave. And he left. And I I'm just kind of there. And you looked over and you went, wow. Like just nothing. No, you just said, wow. It's the conversation, which told me that you were listening.
Hmm.
You were actively listening to the kids and allowing their competency to come through.
Well,
You remember Kenneth?
glad that they said that because, I mean, any good reporter would do the same. I mean, no one is going to go in there and condescend or not listen with as much attention as possible. I don't think anyone who's, in this business who's good.
Well, and the thing I think that struck everybody was their work is so important to them. So you weren't having conversations with them about the product or the fantastic conclusion or the outsized, 4-story tall fire. You were asking them about leadership and their approach and why they do this thing. And so you were showing respect to the exercise, which I think there was a depth of understanding to the thing that resonated with the students you were talking to.
I'm glad to hear it. And I mean, I legitimately was interested in what they're thinking right then. In a big picture way, what are you thinking? But also, what are you thinking right now? What's going through your mind as you're involved in this? This kind of intense thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and this was one. What's that?
felling trees is no joke. I mean, you need to be paying attention, and that was kind of always drilled into the whole process. So, but I was interested in what is running through their minds right now, and also, the big picture, why, kind of two genres of question when you're in a kind of situation where you're observing a thing, like an event happening.
Well, and there's all the different stages. Like felling a tree is no joke. But then, wait, so you felled it. Oh, wait a minute. Now you're going to carry it?
Yeah.
And now you're going to throw it onto the back of a truck and then ultimately bring it to stack site. And this morning at sunrise, you came out to stack at sunrise, and there was Kenneth, who was a junior red pot at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if we discussed it, but Bonfire sort of has an unwritten thing that junior red pots they're not media. Focus on your job. Don't focus on getting noticed.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
But you saw Kenneth and you're like, I have to talk to him. I don't care. I have to talk to him.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I guess he just kind of had an aura of getting after it,
Very intense. Kenneth was, and again, maybe it's your nose for the thing, but you were drawn to people that it was like, it's not like I'm saying, hey, here's Kenneth.
No,
I'm even going, don't talk to, he's a junior red pot, and you're like, I don't care. I have to talk to him. You getting under the logs there again with Legner. But there's you and Frederick. This is center pole raising. So this is at perimeter.
Off. Okay, I remember that. I remember this. Yeah.
So I remember there was a bit of sweating because we were waiting on the truck, which didn't end up showing up till like 9 p.m. to dig the hole.
Yeah, that's right. It was at night. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I could only imagine what Frederick was going through, going, hey, I'm here for this kind of light, and you're telling me I'm going to get nighttime light? But everybody was a trooper, understanding that there's other things that have to happen. And ultimately, to the point of uh, everybody who holds my flash now is Max. Do you remember me sending you this picture?
Yes.
November 23rd.
Okay.
So they were to the outside
Yeah. Right.
tier of stack.
Like the last piece. Is that right?
Yeah, these are the dress logs on the outside. Remembering the dress logs, you carve the name of a crew
That's
or
right.
whatever into it.
Yes.
And if it's the last year that a crew is in existence, they're going to tear a dorm down or repurpose it or something.
Uh,
You face it out so everybody can finally see the name of the dorm.
huh.
Or if somebody passes away, you turn the name out so that you can see the name of the person. But every once in a while, on rare occasions, of course, every dorm has a dorm log that faces in, but on rare occasions, they'll carve a person's name and turn it in. And not knowing what the story was going to be,
Uh-huh. Yes, of course.
not having any idea at all, I came out to stack that night and they said, hey, we decided to do this. We don't know what the story is going to be. We have no idea. But he treated us with respect and he got into it and he did everything that he said he was going to do. And so they carved your name into the log and stacked it and turned it in.
I had forgotten about it. Oh my God, but I certainly remember now. An honor. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and for your reputation, for the purposes of your reputation, this story was already out. They were just waiting to turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was completely written, so everybody knows on the up and up. This everything was signed, sealed, and delivered. And the only thing is nobody at Bonfire knew what was going to come of it.
Yeah.
But they were that impressed with how you did it.
It is an amazing thing. Yeah, right. They trusted me. I guess there was an amount of trust that, in all reporting like this, you want to build trust with the people you're asking them to tell your stories. And there's a certain, responsibility that you have when people are open with you, I think. And I'm glad it worked both ways.
Well, and one of the last things you said, I think it was shortly after you had submitted the article. And again, not having given me anything. I'm just like, tell me something. Just tell me if I need to pack my bags and move to Kuala Lumpur or something. and you're like, no. And you said something to the effect of, understand, like, in this business, my job is to use your stories and your experience. Your job is to use the fact that I'm telling stories. We both have a job, and I hope that when this is over, we can still be friends. But and I respected that. It was very transparent. Listen, I have a job, you have a job, and we'll see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, there's no predict. I mean, sometimes I've written things which I thought I didn't really have, but someone would hate. That you can never predict. Sometimes people hate things that you didn't think they would. So who knows? But on the other hand, you're right. I think it's good for the reporter to be transparent. Like, look, there is trust that you have, and you do have a responsibility to sources who are divulging that. Telling them, they're telling you their stories. There's responsibility I have to get that down. But my ultimate responsibility, though, is, and I think I told you this, is to readers. So
right.
There's a higher responsibilities. Definitely have a responsibility to the people who are opening up to me and telling their stories. But my ultimate responsibility is to this kind of almost theoretical, but not, they exist, but the people who are reading the story. So I have a responsibility to them to give them something. It's kind of like this gift. You have to. There's an kind of significance there where the story wouldn't be good if I didn't have that kind of hierarchy. I don't think.
Yeah.
Then it's like
and it was
propaganda otherwise, or press related, publicity, which everyone knows the difference between a piece of publicity and a piece of art, or I don't want to get so fancified, but a piece of good journalism that is only has you, the reader, in mind. They're not trying to sell something to you. So the
Yeah.
only way that you can produce a good piece of writing is to, I think, have that kind of hierarchy. No offense.
And I well, and I think what no, and that's what I was, that last bit. It would have been, I probably would have gotten a few hours extra sleep, because at this point it was just days before it published. I probably would have gotten a few hours extra sleep total if you'd have said, here's the direction it's going to go. But it was better that you had that honesty at the end that was like, listen, I have a job, and this job is the reader, and I've got and the integrity of what I do as a craft, and you might not like what that turns into, but I did the best I could, and I respected my craft. And it was just kind of like, so when it came out, and I went, this is honest and authentic and salt and pepper. I mean, it's not one way, it's not fluff, it's not marketing, it's a story, and it's authentic. Then it felt better, and I'm glad you didn't tell me what it was gonna be.
I kind of gave you the hint. I gave you some indication, though, especially with the lead or setup, as you say.
Yeah.
But
now, and I think I've told you this before, but it's one thing for me or Griff or James Fuquay or anybody, the Curleys, who trusted that the story was going to be told, to be happy with it, and to be proud to have been a part. It's one thing for a participant who was at that time. I mean, I'm going to see Andrew Pikowski and Shane and Joseph and all them. I'm gonna see them tomorrow.
Oh wow,
we're having a night.
Amazing. Yeah, wish I was there.
Yeah, the night. So we're and they always ask, have you talked to Scott? Have you seen Scott? And so it's one thing for all those people to be happy with the story and triggered by it. But I think I've told you before, and I checked with one of the individuals yesterday, a young lady named Michaela, who was a chair in Leggett Hall this last year.
Okay.
So this past season, she was a chair in Leggett Hall, so one of the crew leaders. And I said, hey, I think I remember you telling me that you read this before you came to A&M.
Oh, wow.
And my memory was accurate. She had, in fact, come up to me at Stack a couple years ago and said, hey, I just made the connection, Dion, the article, She's like, I read that before I came to A&M, and that shaped like what I was going to do in college.
Oh my God.
And that happens more and more often as, if that article came out in 2014, 8 years ago, you're going to have kids now that were in middle school, high school, when they were first looking at it. And so it's completely changed or shaped what people expect out of college. And I asked her, so now that you've been through it to the level you've been through it, how does it hold up? Is what you read what you experienced? And she said it holds up. That's
all right.
the deal.
That's all I can ask for. There's truth in it.
There is. And facts. Both.
And facts. Lots of facts.
So I know you're a busy man. What is it? ScottEden.net, ScottEden.com?
Net, oddly enough.
.net. .net. I keep up with what you're doing. Incredible, like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like
I got one.
Some of these,
by the way, it's pretty wild.
You got another one coming out?
Pretty wild, yeah. So
See, they're all wild.
Should be.
I heard somebody on a podcast talking about your story on gambling and the referees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on a podcast, and I was just like, I wanted to. It's a podcast. I can't call them and be like,
Hey.
hey,
Were they?
but
Was this in a positive light or not?
it was like they weren't even referencing it as, hey, let's talk about the article. They were like, hey, did you know XYZ? It was in this article.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it was, it was informative. It was information, the way you do. But there's that. There was the mining.
Mm-hmm.
All of which to say, you're on to something all the time. So I appreciate you taking the time. You've got some great stories, and I appreciate it. And in the pantheon of Scott Eden stories, where is Bonfire for you? I'm not asking you to rank. It's not fair to everybody else. But what was unique when you were done with this story?
Let me give that a think here. Certainly, the response was much more than I thought it would be. Maybe I underestimated the size or the committedness of the Aggie community. Just how the response. In fact, I didn't know. Maybe the response would be negative, but I guess the sheer interest. I think it got way more like web traffic than I could have expected. I had no expectation. That was a surprise. But also, I don't think I've ever worked on a story where it had both things. Like, I think we've touched on this, but both emotional ends of the spectrum, to such a degree. The sadness of the tragedy. I mean, and then just the fun of those times participating in the construction of this thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had such a dichotomy like that. Such polar emotional sort of experiences.
And you did a good job balancing the fact that you had these things. At one point, even saying it outright, trying to balance these two things.
Yeah.
But we're all of us were happy to have spent time. Aggies who didn't participate were happy that the story was told in the way that it was told. Certainly, lots of rabbit holes we could go down, and I hope we can go down in the future. Spoiler alert: your face walking into yell practice on one of your trips, and the Aggie band marching into Kyle Field, and seeing that in the golden light of the night around Kyle Field, and seeing you turn around and go, it is criminal that anybody should win a football game in this stadium. Anybody but Texas A&M. You're all these, so many things that you experienced. Yell practice, football game.
Yeah, I mean,
history, all of it.
None of it got into the article, but it all informed the piece for sure. All of that kind of, there's like these little micro traditions and part of the bigger one. And I went to Notre Dame. That's definitely present there, but I don't think on the level of an A&M. Just all of the micro thing, that all add up, I guess, to this sort of to the way that the people kind of hold the place sacred. In a way.
Well, I hope that we can explore that in the future, and I hope this served as a fair introduction to everyone with one of the many personalities that I've got to experience over the years of building Bonfire, where I'd say primarily my job anymore is just meeting people, and having met so many people in and around Bonfire. I hope I've done a fair job introducing Scott Eden. You are a part of that history you talk about, this living history of stories. I know that was not your intent, You remain surprised by it,
Hmm.
and that makes it that much more meaningful. So thank you for what you've done. Thank you for taking time today, and I sure hope we can catch up more in the future.
Good times. I got to have some of the barbecue. Is what I need to get back down to Texas to your ranch and
Yeah,
and and have some brisket. I'm hungry
that's it.
right now. So
That brisket and beef belly. Don't forget the beef
oh,
belly.
oh wow, yeah, that's interesting.
That's a whole other podcast.
Wow, I think so. We could go on and
All right, Scott. Well, I
on. Right.
appreciate it. Um, thank you very much. Gig 'em, Scott. We'll keep our eyes out for what's coming out next.
Please, yeah, very soon.
Where?
Uh, uh Inc. magazine. It's the business publication.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting spot for the piece, but it's about an entrepreneur, and hopefully, people will read it.
Outstanding. We will.
Okay,
Thank you,
great.
Scott.
All right. Thank you, Dion. Are we like live? Is this live? Are we doing this live
Mm-mm.
now?
Now we're recording so I can edit everything out.
Okay, good. Make me sound dumber than I am.
Just, I'll just try to. I edit up until the point that I'm like, forget it.